Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's Global Pandemic Show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this weekly conversation around all things COVID. Today is episode 288, and we're going back to a topic we've not addressed in a long time: news you missed. With so much going on, it's easy to miss important news items from around the world. Join us as we highlight stories many of us may have missed. And today we have guests coming in from two different parts of the world. We have with us Bob Anthony at New York Bob, veteran tech and travel journalist, live from New York City, Brooklyn to be precise, and Vandana Menon at Vandana_Menon, freelance writer, senior writer at The Print, live from New Delhi. We are thrilled that you are able to join us. Thank you all for being here. Please tag a friend, tell them about the show, and they can join us live or later. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Communication and Journalism. It's been my pleasure, honor to be part of this coverage that we've done for now almost 18 months. We started just as the pandemic was hitting New York, and we covered it every single day for 250 days, and then we switched to a kind of weekly cadence since December or so of 2020. It's now hard to believe it's almost October of 2021. When we started, we thought we might be doing this for a few weeks, and sadly, we've been stuck in this, and things are still so awful in the US and in many parts of the world. We'll be talking a little bit about the pandemic and then talking about things happening around the pandemic as well. This show is brought to you by Digimentors, the social, digital, and virtual events and hybrid events consulting company. And we work on conferences, summits, webinars, talk shows. Please check us out, digimentors.group, and you can email me. We'd love to talk to you about your conference, about your events. We'd love to work with you. Please let us know if you're interested in learning more. And more about this show. We've had 285 episodes. We've had 545 guests, including 311 women from 75 cities and 22 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. We're doing this in partnership with scroll.in, and we're on youtube.com/Sreenet. Please do subscribe when you can, and we would love to have you be part of our shows on a regular basis. We're very grateful to our producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31, and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon, of course, who you will meet in just a bit. Please tag a friend, please share right now, and they can join us very soon, or they can watch us live or later. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. We have so much going on. I'm just so happy to be able to bring the band back together and have with us Bob Anthony at New York Bob and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. We're going to bring them on so they can say hello to you. Hi, folks. Welcome back to the show. Vandana, of course, has been part of the show on a weekly basis, even after we stopped doing the news you missed. And Bob has been a great supporter and viewer of the show, hasn't been on the air with us, I think, most of 2021, but here he is now. Thank you both for being here. My standard question, we'll start with Bob. How are you and how you been these months?
I'm doing okay. Thanks to a wedding that I went to a few days ago, I've been getting out more. I mean, I've been hesitant to go out into the streets, but I was at a wedding on a Saturday, then a press event on a Monday, and I'm starting to get it back out into the world again, which kind of seems strange. But I'm still wearing my mask and still being careful. I'm still not pretending it's over.
And it is not over, but I'm so glad you're going out, because I know for a long time you were among the most careful people I knew. And I said on this show, it's like one of these episodes, that when you go back to events, especially those journalism events, tech events, then we know the world is back in a good place. And that leads me to ask you, what's the story with CES this year?
CES is going to be a real event this year. I'm still on the fence as to whether I'm going. It'll be hybrid, so I'll flip a coin when the time gets closer. When it gets closer to the first week in January, and I'll make a decision then. But it's still a real show.
And tell us about CES, just for people who aren't familiar with it.
Oh, okay. That's short for what we used to call the Consumer Electronics Show, the big gizmo and gadget shindig in Vegas every year. And I've been going for I guess, the last 25 years. A big part of what I do during the pandemic, of course, I couldn't go, even if, and it was a all virtual event for the first time in 2020, 2021, I should say. So it's means a lot to me to go to this event every year. I really want to go in January, but if it's not safe, I'm not going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can't believe we're talking actually about the third version of CES, because obviously 2020, 2021, 2022. So let's go to Vandana, who is joining us after doing all these episodes from New York. She is now in New Delhi. Hi, Vandana.
Hi. Yeah, I moved to Delhi since I was last on the show. Um, and it's like Bob, I'm also transitioning into the new normal. It feels weird to be around so many people again and to be going to office. I now commute almost daily and sit in an office, which feels so strange. And I think more than that, I'm overwhelmed by traffic. So it's like this weird transition into life as we knew it. So yeah, that's a bit overwhelming.
So tell us about India. Obviously, on this show, we covered all the trouble that India was in, especially with that second wave after all the troubles of last year, second wave this year. The fact that you're back working, back in traffic, tells us something, but give us an update.
Yeah, I think things are almost back to normal in India. I wasn't here. I was in New York during the first wave and through 2020. So I don't know. I can't imagine things being too different then. But things are back to normal. I believe the rate of COVID has really dropped. The number of COVID deaths have dropped. Vaccinations are on the rise. So that's going quite well, if government numbers are to be believed. But it seems like Indian society is just back to normal, at least here in Delhi. Yeah, everybody's back out, markets are full, there is lots of traffic. So yeah.
And what has surprised you about India these 18 months? I mean, you've been gone for more longer because you were here studying and then working with us at Digimentors and freelancing. But what has changed about India because of the pandemic?
That's a good question. I can't actually say that much has changed. I think people are a lot more aware of I want to say people are more aware of like space, but I don't think that's true in the most crowded parts of Delhi. I think I spent, right after I moved back to India, I lived like a hermit in Hyderabad, my parents' house, barely left. So here I've got to do a lot more running around. And I think in Hyderabad, people were generally a bit more aware. Everybody wears masks out in public. That's definitely there. But crowding and, you know, that kind of physical movement hasn't really stopped.
Yeah, and it's hard, like just like New York, like the New York subway
Crowded, yeah.
is crowded. India,
Yeah.
especially the big cities, are very crowded. And I'll just make one remark about masks. Southeast Asia is really good about masks. I'm talking before COVID, people would by habit wear a mask if they're sick, that wear a mask if there was pollution, things like that. In Delhi, on my last trip, which was in January 2020, I was seeing some people wearing masks, but that might have been for pollution more than worry about the COVID virus, which was still kind of a faraway problem. And lots has changed in this time. Also, the anger and fear about China, I think, has escalated, partly because of border trouble, because of COVID, and also we did a show about this. 60 apps and tech platforms from China were canceled by India, banned by India. So there's no TikTok for most people in India. which India TikTok was very popular. I guess they're all on Instagram instead, Instagram Reels.
Yeah, Instagram Reels is the new thing. But yeah, I think that kind of general antagonism towards China or Pakistan and the outsider, that's kind of continued. So it feels like people are fighting multiple viruses. But I think more than that, I mean, people are still thinking about it in terms like that. They've got issues at the border and they've got issues within India. But I think more than that, India is still reeling from the economic effects of the previous lockdowns. So I think most people are really unwilling to go back into that. So you've got, so that's why I'm talking about markets so much, because every store in the market is open. Everybody's haggling. Everybody's trying, dropping their prices to get rid of stocks. So that kind of, those symbols of economic distress are that I believe the rate of gold loans, for example, have really increased because people are just pawning whatever little they have left. So I think that's the biggest change that I'm seeing. Just the signals of economic distress are much more clear now.
And just for our American audience, this idea of first of all, gold is just discussed so much more in India than it is when you live every day-to-day life in America. Everyone knows the price of gold per gram, and people hoard gold, buy gold, sell gold.
It's usually a last resort as a means to take out a loan or pawn your jewelry. But the fact that it's increased shows that more and more people need money, if not for hospital bills, then for and whatever else. So that's one thing that I'm definitely seeing more of.
Thank you, Vandana. And folks, Vandana is joining us all the way from New Delhi, India. Bob's in Brooklyn. I'm on the Upper West Side. Still very grateful for the privilege of being able to work from home like I have been able to, Bob and Vandana have. But lots of people in America and around the world have not been. We mentioned the subway system earlier. So what we do in this show is we ask Bob and Vandana to share stories that we might have missed, important stories, big stories that in another time would have been maybe even some of the biggest stories in the world, but we missed them because there's so much going on. So there will be a mix of big things, small things, but all kind of unusual and interesting things chosen by two wonderful journalists. So please join us. Please tag a friend, tell them to join us, ask questions. Bob is now going to share some of the things that he's picked out for us, including, I'm sure, as always, there'll be something from the subway system. But before that, I'll just say hi to Jonathan Borstein, who has watched 288 episodes of this show. Thank you so much, Bob, to Jonathan for his support. He's been a guest. He's been a host. We're very grateful. And Rajan is watching from Center Reach, Long Island. Thank you, Rajan, for all your support. And Joe Appio, who has been watching from day one. Great to have you with us. And Stefan's here as well. Stefan, part of our Digimentors team, who does many of our productions and shows and has his own great show, Spin It Social. So it's great to be here. Hi, Sree, Vandana, and Bob. So thank you. And now let's go to Bob as he talks us through one of the stories he has picked. And a reminder to everybody, part of the reason we started doing the show was that I was talking to him late one night. I was walking my dog, and he said there was some incident at my subway station 1 block away, and I didn't hear about it because it was in the middle of the early panic around COVID in New York. And I said, we've got to do a show on this. And Bob kind of ran with it, and here we are. So over to you, Bob.
Yeah, and I might as well lead off with a subway story, since I'm biased. My father used to be my father was a subway worker. But if you ride the subways late at night, you might see this little train zipping by. It's the new R211 subway train, which the city has ordered maybe 500 of these, but one of them has been delivered and is right now, they're testing it basically on every line in the system that it can fit on. It doesn't run on the numbered lines. And this R211 will replace the what we call the R46s, those trains with the orange, red, and yellow seats, and instead of that run on the A train line, you can tell because they're kind of dimly lit. But as you zoom in, Sree, look at the back of the train. Those aren't headlights. It's a string. It's a string of LEDs, angled LEDs in front instead of round headlights. That's one thing that you'll notice that's different. Inside, the signage will not only tell you the name of the station that you're at, it'll point towards where the best. There'll be arrows pointing to the exit.
That's great.
The trains also have LEDs on the sides of the doors once you're in them, and those will let you know if the doors are closing, or and that you ought to get out of the way. So a lot of new amenities within these new R211 trains. They'll replace the oldest ones on the A train, and everybody in Staten Island will be happy to know that they'll be getting these too. They'll replace all of the R44s on the Staten Island railway system. So if you're up late enough at night, you might catch these testing on the A line, L line, F line. It's a crapshoot.
And and then I'm sure the mechanics are better as well because they're newer trains and things like that too. Amarildo says great, so I'm glad to welcome to the show.
The brakes are better. It'll be able to use the new positive control system that they're installing in the subway system. Communications based train control is what they call it. So yes, it's on the way, and we've only gotten we've gotten 10 of the 500 cars that have been ordered.
And so what we looked at were like 3 cars. Is that correct?
We looked at half a train. We looked at their testing in 5-car sets.
Okay.
But when they're running, of course, there'll be 10-car trains.
And Mita is asking a question. What about damage due to flood in the subway system?
Luckily, they were able to recover relatively quickly, but some stations that got flooded badly, they took time. Not only water, but debris. And I believe there was one train, I wish I could say it was a R160, one of the newer ones, that must have been in the way of the flooding as it poured down from above, because they had to take that train out of service, and it had to be towed to the subway yard. So it's back, but there were pumps in the subway system, but they couldn't possibly handle what we got.
Yeah, just to remind everyone that the New York City broke its all-time record for an amount of rain in a single 3-hour period that had been set 11 days before. It wasn't set, in 1850. It was set 11 days before, and that's part of the issue that we're going to be dealing with climate change. And as Bob knows, the city, because of the way the subway tracks are built, has to pump out 13 million gallons of water on a dry day. So imagine what it has to do when that kind of intense rain comes in and the devastation that follows. Thank you. You had one more train thing you wanted to show us?
Let's see. I'm not sure which one I sent you. I think it related to the same thing. It was a different shot of the interior of the train.
Oh, so the interior. Yeah, let's take a look at the interior. Sorry, this is the exterior. Let's look at
that MTA video I might have sent you is basically a brief walkthrough.
Nice.
And I can.
Yeah, I have it. So I'm just going to pull that up here so we can take a look. And
I'll talk over it because I know I know the music's loud.
Yeah, no, I've turned it off. So go ahead. So tell us what we're looking at.
And they had to be trucked in from Nebraska. Actually, and there we go. There's an internal shot. You'll see a few more poles for hanging on to.
That's good. And the most accessible ones,
more accessible seating instead of the one on the end of the train. You'll have more space for the disabled. Security cameras, obviously. That's the new signage I was talking about. That'll tell you more than just the stop. And there's the LEDs on the side of the doors. That's
very exciting.
Brief recap of the R211.
Yeah. I got to say, Bob, the only time I ever hear the numbers of the train models is when I talk to you on the show. So you can go through your whole life in New York without ever knowing those names. But Bob and aficionados, and there's a great Brooklyn transit station where you can see some of these trains and hang out with train geeks like Bob over there. So thank
Yes.
you. And let's switch over to Vandana, who has a story to share with us. So which one do you want us to go to?
I think the one I was really excited about is the fact that archaeologists have found ancient footprints that date back 23,000 years. So that's before the Ice Age. And up until now, we assume that humans arrived in the Americas after the Ice Age. And so this was really exciting to find out. That means that people were kind of walking through the Americas through the ice at the same time as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and things like that. And apparently, as part of the prints that they found evidence of a mother putting their child down on the ground and then children jumping up and down. And I just love that. I love that. To see signs of life 23,000 years ago, and also that they were able to uncover and find these tracks. That was really exciting, and it basically changes a timeline by about 10,000 years. I think we had evidence of human arrival 13,000 years ago. Wow. So this means that humans have been living and weathering climate change much longer than us, and that's a nice glimmer of hope, I think.
And of course, that also means that the understanding of life in America, in the Americas, is pushed back 10,000 years. So that raises new questions, new opportunities for understanding. Thank you, Vandana. And that story is written by Carl Zimmer, who's a terrific science journalist. And if you ever get a chance to read anything by him, please do so. He's written books, has a newsletter, all of that stuff. So check out Carl Zimmer's stuff. So thank you, Vandana. We're going to fast forward 23,000 years because Bob has a story for us that is about something else. Bob, tell us.
Let's see. Okay. That's a good one to pull up at this moment. After a few months of really not a lot happening in the tech circles, all of a sudden we have a flurry of announcements from Apple. We had one from Amazon just, I believe, yesterday. But Microsoft also had an event within the last few days, and they revised their Surface line of laptops, of mobile PCs. And the one that piqued my interest was the Surface Pro 8. It's basically a convertible PC. I'm using a Surface Pro 6 in this broadcast right now. But among the improvements, aside from just the muscle of the new Surface Pro 8 above the previous versions, is there we go. That's a good timing, Sree. Is the revised Surface Slim Pen 2. Not only does it store in the little nook in the keyboard that you see there, it recharges there too. It recharges wirelessly, and what's different in this new pen than the old one is that it has a little bit of feedback in the pen itself. So when you're writing on the screen, it feels like you're writing on paper. So that's just a little usability tweak that they made. And the Surface also improved their connectivity. Instead of a plain old USB-C port, which is what they had in the Surface Pro 7, it now has 2 Thunderbolt ports. And that is big news for people who edit videos, people who move a lot of data around. It seems like a little techie tweak, but that's a major upgrade from the Surface Pro 7. This unit, like a lot of other new units that are coming out right now, might be hamstrung by the supply chain issues we're having at the moment, and shipping issues. So we'll see if this arrives in good volume in time for this student semester and for the for the fall and the winter as people return to work. But this is among the PCs that I admire the most, Microsoft's line of Surfaces, and this just came out a week ago. Goes on shows up in stores. I don't want to put out an ad. Shows up in stores on October 5th.
Thank you. And by the way, James says thank you for the news update. Rajan says the R211 cars are gorgeous. And Mita has a question. Are tech companies leaving California en masse? What impact will the, I guess it's talking about California, have on the economy of Western North America? These are all terms that I'm not familiar with. But
yes, I'm a little. Chimerica is a term I haven't heard.
Okay.
I don't believe you're going to find tech companies leaving California. I mean, we've the southeast U.S. is becoming a little bit more attractive. I believe Ford just announced that it's putting new plants for its electric vehicles in the South.
In Tennessee, yeah.
Yes. And so there is pull from other parts of the country. But Silicon Valley is solid. I don't see people running away from that. And, places like New York, which is just got a major Google expansion on the old St. John's railroad terminal on the extreme west side of Manhattan. I mean, that's just an indication of there's pull from other areas of the country. But no, I don't think California has anything to worry about in terms of the tech industry leaving. My opinion.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Let's go back, and now it's Vandana's turn. Vandana, what do you have for us?
This isn't slightly sad news, but made an impression in India and South Asia. But a South Asian feminist named Kamala Basin passed last week. She was trailblazing feminist leader in South Asia, and she was a poet, a singer, an activist, and was responsible for popularizing the slogan Azadi. Azadi translates to freedom. It's the Urdu word for freedom, and it's essentially become the rallying cry of the last 20 years. It's maybe this generation at least. And so at every protest, you will hear people asking or demanding Azadi. And Kamala Basin reportedly was traveling in Pakistan and attended a meeting with women in Pakistan who were meeting to talk about how they can demand better education or like the right to be educated. And they were talking about, we want Azadi, we want freedom from these shackles. And she was so struck by that she brought that back to India and popularized the slogan here. And now at any protest, you will hear people chanting for Azadi. So that was her. And if you've watched the Bollywood movie Gully Boy, it's made its way into a rap song in Gully Boy as well, because in that song they're also chanting for Azadi. So she played a pretty important role in shaping India's feminist resistance, and unfortunately passed last week. And I used to read her growing up. So it's interesting because I found out so much more about her and her politics in the last week, but I wanted to mention this.
Oh, we get to say it, Vandana. Go ahead. Go ahead. You say it. Not often we get to say it.
Yeah, that I muted. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was saying.
But she obviously fought against the patriarchy, and
yeah.
And there's a lot more awareness about that in India these days than there was 20 years ago. And
yeah, her generation of activist leaders basically shaped the last two generations of women growing up in India, and are responsible for a lot. They were pushing back against very regressive, oppressive systems, and so kind of blazed the way, laid the path for women like me.
Sure.
See, I hadn't heard that at all. That's the perfect example of overlooked news right there.
Yep. So I'm going to show you my overlooked stuff by pulling up the old-fashioned newspaper, and this is the Wall Street Journal front page as a story. Federal judges heard cases despite a financial interest, and that story has a 2-page full treatment, deep dive into judges who broke the law. And that's the opening sentence. More than 130 federal judges have violated U.S. law and judicial ethics by by overseeing court cases involving companies in which they have a financial interest or they are their family-owned stock. Look at this, 130 judges. And this is a story written by James Grimaldi, Coulter Jones, and Joe Palazzolo. It's a big story. The other big story that the Wall Street Journal has been breaking this week is a tech story that I know Bob has thoughts on. Facebook's effort to attract preteens reaches back years, and they here they go about worrying. They're worrying about competition from TikTok, which you mentioned earlier, and Snapchat. And there's Georgia Wells and Jeff Horowitz, the Facebook File, 6th in a series. The importance of journalists digging, doing investigative reporting, telling stories really comes through in this particular story. And Bob, I'm curious about your take on the series.
I mean, just the fact that Facebook was, the company was reaching out to the younger set. I mean, I remember, and I'm dating myself right here, when CompuServe tried the same ages ago with a new service called WoW. And it was supposed to be a filtered service aimed at children that would keep them away from the worst of what was the fledgling internet at the time. And it didn't go anywhere because the people basically didn't know who was doing the filtering. Didn't really have a lot of faith in CompuServe to do that. Here with Facebook and Instagram, I guess, is where the drive was going. I wonder why they keep trying. There's so much pushback from teachers, from other educators. I don't get the point. So it's obviously a business issue. There's a lot of additional money out there if they can pull in preteens and whatnot, but I don't understand why they want to swim upstream like this.
Yeah, and it's so problematic the way that's happening, and really pitiful to see that. In fact, folks, once a week, Bob and I write a newsletter together with our colleague Zach Peterson, and in it we get to talk about what's happening in the news and so much more. And this week, the headline is Facebook is back in the crosshairs, and you can find this on my Substack. So I hope you will subscribe, and you'll find my newsletter and Bob's tech tip in the newsletter, sreenet.substack.com. So if you search for my name in Substack, you can find me as well. I love this cartoon. Aren't you terrified about the debt Biden is leaving for future generations? An elephant says to this kid while the world is on fire. But the whole piece is really about the various things we've learned from Jeff Horowitz's reporting and others as well in this. And then if you go down further, you will see Bob's weekly tech tip. So this all ties together nicely, and I hope all of you will take a look at it as well. And please do subscribe. It's worth it just getting Bob's tech tip weekly in your inbox, sreenet.substack.com. And we do also want to tell you that the publication that Vandana works for has covered this. So Vandana, tell us about how your publication, The Print, covered this.
This is a story that I reported on, but what Facebook is doing and recently did in India was hire a retired civil servant to head their public policy in India. So this is not a new move. Facebook has hired government officials in the past to kind of help them navigate complicated tech policy. But this is something that a lot of big tech is beginning to do, especially in India, where they have to face increased regulations and sort of a more vigilant government that's out to get big tech. So this was something that I reported on last week.
Nice. So I gave the credit to the whole publication, but the credit goes to you. And you're right. This is something that they've done in Washington. Done this in England, and then in fact,
Yeah.
Nick Clegg is a
Yeah.
British politician who heads all of the comms for Facebook. So that's kind of
it's an interesting new field. I feel public policy where they really have to navigate all of these issues and also act like a go-between between governments and company policy. So I just thought it was really interesting. And yeah, just that they did this because this man who they hired was previously, he left active service, he took voluntary retirement to join Uber and then was basically poached from Uber by Facebook India.
So now let's talk about this story that you brought.
Yeah, speaking of, this was a really fun read for me. Aussie media was on the phone with Goldman Sachs and over a $40 million investment in their company. And it turns out that the COO impersonated a YouTube executive on the phone using technology to garble his voice. And then Goldman Sachs caught him out on it and realized that, and got in touch with YouTube, and YouTube got involved. And then things just kind of really quickly unraveled. An early investor pulled out from Aussie media. This man who was on the phone call is now on leave to take care of his mental health. But it was just a really bizarre story that with a bizarre amount of money that I think just kind of slipped under the radar, at least for me.
Yeah, so this is there's a story by Ben Smith's column. Follow him on Twitter, guys. Ben YT. He does great reporting. Jonathan Martin, who's a New York Times journalist, says Aussie stuff is remarkable, and big ups to Ben for revealing how some rich folks can be easy marks. You know, they got $85 million, but it's less amusing when you realize they're forking over money for this big deal when flagship papers in states across the country are bleeding. Democracy requires journalism, and that's really a problem. He gives an example out of Wyoming, but part of the reason why America is in the situation it's in today is because the death of newspapers. And I want to bring Bob into this conversation about newspapers and the value. You've done it all as a journalist, and your thoughts when you saw that Aussie story, when you see this kind of disparity in where people want to go for the newer, shinier media companies when there's so many great media companies that need help.
Yeah, I had actually gotten something in my Twitter feed from someone from Aussie who had quit on account of this news. And it wasn't anyone that I knew, but it was, once I looked a little into the story, I was just like, what is this? But yes, and I just was in a Zoom with some other journalists and we were talking about where people get their news from. And we were talking about how the vaccination rate among Blacks is, especially younger Blacks, is very low. And we were wondering, where the heck are they getting their news? Are they getting it from social media? They're apparently not watching the CBS, the NBC nightly news or the CBS evening news, because that's where I see excellent information coming in. I don't think they're watching Newsmax or OAN, but God knows they might be watching Fox. So yes, it bothers me that the people like the Wall Street Journal, which you just held up a second ago, the people who are doing the really big, heavy-duty research aren't getting the respect and the investments that they deserve.
Yeah, and that's such a pity. And we see the direct consequences of that. This week, we also learned that many NBA stars are not vaccinated. The WNBA, however, is almost fully vaccinated. So once again, it's a league mostly of Black women saving America once again, as we have seen in politics and so many other spheres. Folks, we're almost out of time. There's a question that's come in about in London. I've not been following enough of the news about the gas shortages and high oil prices. In the UK, it's some stunning video of lines of people waiting to get in. I don't know if either of you have followed that story. Vandana, have you been seeing that out of England?
No, I haven't, but there have been high oil prices in India as well. And I wonder if there's some connection there.
And of course, England is dealing with the results of Brexit, but these are all examples, folks, of stories that would have been huge stories, in terms of these judges. I've heard almost no one talk about it today, or this oil shortage in England would have been big stories. But this is the way we live now with the pandemic, and it's still with us, and still a long way to go. Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you kind of what are you working on these days? We saw a little bit of Vandana's work, but Bob, and if there's anything you want to tell us about what you're working on and what you're looking forward to as the pandemic doesn't end in America, it kind of shifts a little more.
I'm just looking forward to doing more, getting out there more and seeing products again, being able to chat with my fellow journalists and compare notes live, like I haven't been able to do of late. The walks I've taken recently have been both uplifting and depressing. Depressing when I see so many storefronts closed, uplifting when I accidentally run into a good friend.
Yeah.
So it's a mix. But I'm looking forward to doing more real meeting, interviewing, and writing.
Wonderful. And everyone, please follow Bob. He's at New York Bob on Twitter and Facebook, Twitter. You can find him everywhere, and on Pinterest with his 1 million+ followers. And Rose says that I think part of high energy prices has to do with the shortage of ships, which of course are also connected to all the supply chain issues that Bob mentioned earlier, and the shortage of chips and ships, and all of that are coming back to trouble us right now. Let's go to Vandana, reporting in from Delhi, where she is now based, dealing with traffic, which she didn't have to all through the pandemic in New York. It was so easy to get everywhere.
Yeah, now I have to be stuck in traffic for like an hour every day. It's horrible.
What about the subway system in Delhi?
It's so good. It's really good. I take it back in the evening because if I have to spend an hour commuting, I might as well do it on the subway through traffic. My work hours are really flexible, so it depends on the time of day. But yeah, public transport in India is really good. We have much more more modern and new subway cars when compared to.
You're wondering why Bob is making such a fuss about the.
No,
well, you lived in New York.
Yeah, so I get it. But so it's always quite surprising when I come back to India and I step on the metro system here, and it's excellent. But yeah, working on connectivity through in all of these cities. But yeah, I'm working on a couple of stories. It's interesting to be back in this new pace of life, and yeah.
And you're covering social media, right? You're covering social media.
Well, yes, it's one of the things I'm covering. Yeah.
And
I'm also working on a more in-depth, researched, long-form style series that kind of looks into issues that are shaping contemporary India. So subscribe to the print if you haven't yet, so you can get that when it's out.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Rajan says, blessings to all of you this evening and every day. Please stay safe, healthy, and strong. That's a good note for us to end on. We'll just remind everyone that we actually have a couple of extra episodes coming up. We're going to be live this week tomorrow. That's Thursday, September 30th at 9 p.m., which is 6:30 a.m. in India, where Vandana is. And I thought she did great for being awake so early. And serial connector and seasoned communicator, founder and CEO Susan McPherson is our guest on the lost art of connecting. And you will learn a lot from her book. It's about the gather, ask, do method for building meaningful business relationships. So I can't wait to learn about that 23 hours from now, and encourage all of you to join in. Tag a friend. They can watch us live or later. That's episode number 289. And I'll tell you about one more episode we have coming up on Tuesday, episode number 290, Vietnam under COVID. And we have Lien Huang coming to us from Ho Chi Minh City, and Yue Ye, who is with they've created a fundraiser to help various folks dealing with the pandemic. So please tune in on Thursday night and on Tuesday night. It's our first time going to be live from Vietnam, and we're excited about that. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to our two guests. And Rose has been posting, she says, the FT story and oil prices, and looking forward to the show from Susan McPherson. That is awesome. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.